Yeah, what's cool is when you shared your story in, civil engineering, that's basically kind of how my career started. And went to school to become a land surveyor. And I worked out in the field as a surveyor for over 5 years. And where our paths kind of went different directions it was in the late 80s that everything went south, as you well know. And when you were appointed, president of self-importance at the company with just you, I also got laid off. And that was the time that I understood that God had a different plan for me, and that was to go to work for Caterpillar. And so for almost two decades following my civil engineering land surveying experience, I went to work for CAT. I worked 5 years in the truck engine division. I knew nothing about truck engines getting into it. From there, I went into an ag division that we were just launching at our dealership, and so I worked with farmers for 14 years. And then I ended my career there, sales analytics, which I didn't care so much about. But in retrospect, as I look back on all those experiences, each one of those really prepared me now to be doing what I'm doing as a staff guy with CBMC. John and I and Paul and a lot of us that are on staff, Gary and whoever else, Larry and Ed and Stan, and we have to be generalists. We're probably not, well, you guys are great at a lot of things. I'm not really great at anything, but I can do a lot of things okay. And as I look back on my life experiences, it gave me a lot of diversity, which prepared me for what I'm doing now. And so the cool thing is as you learned along the way too, Marty, every chapter in the book of your life, there is a purpose behind it that now probably makes a little bit more sense. And especially for you younger guys, don't underappreciate how God is using the things that are going on right now for something much greater later on. And that includes the really difficult things too. And what Michael shared last night is a good example. Terrible, ridiculous, difficult things. But look where Michael has come from a year ago until to today, and imagine what's going to be happening here in another 5-10 years, and how your story is going to make such a difference in people's lives. So, praise God. Amen. So, with that, let's see. What do we got, John? The thing that I'm going to just share a little bit of.
Apologize. Your computer froze here. You just said out loud, Gary. Yeah. Yeah, password. Yeah, password, lowercase. 1, 2, 3. That's a good one, guys.
So Gary asked me to share a little bit about peer advisory groups, John and I, peer advisory groups, and specifically trusted advisor forums groups, which I'm going to share a few minutes about until 9:20, as I said, and then John is going to take a little bit deeper dive into our young professionals trusted advisor, or I should say peer advisory groups. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. I love that. I think of Marty talking about the John 3:16 building. Think of that. The architect had no clue 3:16 was going to be John 3:16, right? Your light is shining before others in such a significant way. And, with us staff guys, to a large degree, we're blessed to spend a lot of our time with people that are already walking with the Lord daily, an intimate relationship with Him. It's guys like Marty and the business leaders that are out there that have such an amazing platform with people that just don't know Jesus personally. And what's really cool about the CBMC Trusted Advisor Forums groups is that we really develop and equip businessmen like you to be ambassadors for Christ and spiritual reproducers. And that's what we do. And so I'm just going to take a little swing through what TAFs are, TAFs, Trusted Advisor Forums groups. Back in the day, they began meeting in 1986. So those were the first, at that time, forums groups. And Paul, I think Wayne Sharp was one of the earlier guys in that, and maybe Ken Johnson. And who were some of the other earlier guys with the first forums groups? Do you remember?
Yes.
Any names pop up that?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, I mean it. And from your recollection, was it like one group and it was just kind of going for a while, and then it?
The Caleb groups were the forerunner to forum.
Got it.
And the Caleb groups were meeting in Minnesota. And then we took the Caleb model to Chicago.
Yes.
And forum developed out of the Caleb group in Chicago.
Got it.
So it's one of those deals.
Got it. Understood. Yep. And so the cool thing, and so guys, Caleb Group, so there is a group of business leaders in Minneapolis, St. Paul that they're very successful guys, just doing well, on fire for Christ. And they recognize the need to support full-time staff guys in our area, in the Northland area, financially. And so they took it upon themselves to begin meeting once a month for a CBMC Caleb meeting, and the idea was that each guy would commit to giving $5,000 a year to support the area directors, which Paul was one of those, John O'Sullivan, and it got to the point where my understanding is that they raised enough support that they could actually launch a couple of staff guys in New York, wasn't it? One or two, I think, in New York? One, yep. So, I mean, the point being, when we think of the genesis of forums groups, business leaders meeting for 3 to 4 hours once a month to take a deep dive into their business, integrating biblical principles into their business, that's what we're doing with our Trusted Advisor forums groups. The genesis was a core group of CBMC business owners that had the capacity financially and felt the need and the call to really investing into the growth in areas by adding staff people. We're a volunteer-led ministry. If it isn't for probably everybody in this room that is either a current volunteer leader, or you were a volunteer leader, or you're going to be a volunteer leader, I think everybody in this room would fall into one of those categories. Without our volunteer leaders, we've got nothing. And that's what these Caleb guys were. And so they got together, supported the ministry and the growth of it with their finances, but then they also decided that it sounds like we need to do this more formally, and how can we, iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. We need to get together and talk about our businesses and talk about how do we integrate biblical principles into our businesses, how do we hold each other accountable, how do we pray for our families and each other as the spiritual battle is just unbelievable. And that's what our TAFs do, and that was the foundation of our forums groups. So, it started fairly small, 1986. Today, there are about 700 guys that are in Trusted Advisor forums groups around the country. There are about 700. In the Northland area, I think we're right around 240, 235, 245. It's right in that area of trusted. So we've got guys like Marty, we've got 240 of those. I would say 80% of our guys are business owners that are in our Trusted Advisor forums groups. The way we talk about those groups and whether you'd be the right fit to be in a Trusted Advisor. By the way, who in here has been to a meeting or is part of one? So we got a lot of them, so you guys get it. You guys get it. So I'm preaching to the choir for you guys. It's for the guys that didn't raise your hands that this will be a more relevant conversation. But for the guys that are even, you maybe can understand a little bit more and a little bit deeper. So as you go and share with other people about how valuable this is for you, maybe you'll have a little bit more ammunition to share that story. That's the vast majority of the growth that we've been blessed to have with Trusted Advisor Forums, is a guy that's in a group going to somebody in his network and saying, John, this is really good, and you need to just trust me on this. I mean, you know me, and I wouldn't throw you under the bus. You should just take a flyer on this because I think it'll help your life. And that's how we've grown. We've tried social media, and we've bought ads in business journals, and we've been on radio, and we've done events, and we've done it all trying to grow. And 90+% of our growth has come just one guy that's in it saying to another guy. So we make it a regular routine as staff guys in the Northland area to go to our constituents, to our existing members, and we say to them, hey, could you go into your LinkedIn profile really quick and pick out 5 guys that have these attributes. They're a Christian, and you've got a really good handle on the fact that they're following Jesus daily. Secondly, they're a business leader. That would be an owner, director, C-level management. And thirdly, they have autonomy with their schedule. In other words, they can carve out 3 to 4 hours once a month to be part of one of these groups. And if you could just find 5 guys, and we've got an bridge email that we can have you send to that guy, or we'll just take it from here. The bridge email between your buddy and us as a staff guy is really helpful to build credibility. But if you just give us a name and a phone number, I do that all the time with John. I just hand him off names and phone numbers, and he just goes and gets it, But if we can have that bridge email, that is the best way that we can get growth. But for the guys that all raised your hand, hopefully what we'll talk about for a couple minutes here will spur you on to be more aggressive in helping see this part of our ministry grow. So, trained facilitators. So, one of the things, we've got about 150 trained facilitators for Trusted Advisor Forums groups right now. Again, the key to our growth is we've got to have volunteers. We'll never be able to staff up to the point that a staff guy is going to be able to lead, all the groups that God is calling us to be having with CBMC nationally. There's just no way. And the way that we've approached it in the Northland area is when we launch a group, myself or John with Young Professionals, or Don Hoffert with the Trusted Advisor Forums, he's my colleague in the Northland area. So by the way, Northland, it's myself. John is heading up our YP focus in the Northland. Don Hoffert is the area director for Trusted Advisor Forums groups. Don also plays a role nationally helping out with TAFs. We've also got Scott Ward, who is focused on the southern part of Minnesota, so from Minneapolis, St. Paul down to the Iowa border. And then we've got Seth Neistad, who is focused on really from the Twin Cities to all the way up to the Canadian border. And then Seth is also taking off and going and helping us launch in Wisconsin right now. And so those are the guys that we've got on staff. Tom Whitney is our prayer warrior. Tom was the area director previous to me. And Tom is an associate field staff guy now, field partner. What did I, field, associate field. Hello. And so we've got a prayer warrior guy. We've got several guys that are focused on building TAF groups in the outstate areas of Minnesota. And then Don and I and John are really kind of more focused on the Twin Cities, although John's going to talk a little bit about growing the young professional focus in other areas throughout the Northland. So let's see, that's a bit about the Northland. What else? I love this. This came right out of our facilitator training manual, these next couple of lines. We conservatively estimate that the average business leader reaches 500 people a year. I've seen actually some statistics that are a lot higher than that, maybe closer to 1,000 people, the average business leader. So you think of your clients, your employees, the professional service providers for you and your organization, on and on and on. We touch a lot of people as business leaders. Marty touches a lot of people. So if the average CBMC Trusted Advisor Forums group has 12 guys, this results in reaching 6,000 people per group per year. 1,000 Christ-centered TAF members have the potential of influencing over 500,000 people a year, resulting in 5 million by 10 years. I mean, you start doing these math exercises, and sure, some of this is best case scenario, but you know what? Even if the number was a quarter of that, just imagine if we had the ability to reach over 1 million people through CBMC on an annual basis, and again, let your light shine before others so that when you see your good works, your Father in heaven will be glorified. People are watching our business leaders. People look up to them. These communities, one of the strategies that Northland has really taken. So when Don and I got involved, Don maybe a year or so, 8 or 9 months before I did, I saw a little blurb on LinkedIn, which is kind of an anomaly. I said most of it is word of mouth, inviting people. This was back in 2009, and I was transitioning from I had my Caterpillar stint for almost 2 decades, and then I had about a 1.5 year period where I was working with a couple of other guys launching a employee engagement, job satisfaction, leadership development company. I actually took over the organization and was turning it into a nonprofit to serve other nonprofits in the area of employee engagement. And as I was going through all of that, I just felt like, you know what, I'm kind of alone here. And, I love Jesus, but, it's like, I don't know, there is this gap in my life. And I was on LinkedIn working at, and all of a sudden I saw this, somebody posted something saying, I'm looking for guys that are Christians, that are business leaders, and would really value being in fellowship with other guys once in a while, once a month. And I just, for whatever reason, I followed up, and it was Don Hofford, and Don said, hey, there's this thing called CBMC. And I'm like, cool, isn't it a TV channel? And he's like, no, Christian Businessmen's Connection. And I'm like, okay, well, tell me all about it, And next thing I know, I was getting into one of those groups, and a few months later, it's like, wow, this was life-changing for me. It was really helping me in the organization that I was building up. It gave me a whole different perspective about really what I was designed to do. That's what we do is we develop Christian businessmen. We meet guys right where they're at to help them become all that God designed them to be. And I was really beginning to feel that. And so I started sharing with other people. It's like, dude, you need to be part of this. This is going to be life-changing for you. And as I did that, we just started to grow. And Don is out kind of working his network of people. And before you know it, we were really beginning to grow. And we felt this call to doing something a little bigger from an event standpoint. And that's when we had John Piper come in. And Don't Waste Your Life was the topic that he presented to, we had about 500 people, 400 or 500 people at this event. And all of a sudden from that event, and it was a CBMC event, and I helped plan it as just a volunteer, as a volunteer guy in the Northland area, we really began to see things kind of flourish and multiply. Shortly after I came on staff, and there was a period of time for, I'd say for probably 5 or 6 years that we kept doubling the number of trusted advisor forums groups that we had. It's like, okay, well, why that and not like Connect 3 groups? As you look at CBMC, so 90th year right now, right? And how CBMC started in Chicago, business guys, depression, everything sucks, butcher, baker, candy maker, I'm not selling any, candy, I'm not selling any breads, and, nobody's buying any steaks right now, nobody's having any money. Let's get together and talk about our businesses and our families, and let's encourage each other. And a year later, they began to, follow God's call to doing something even more than that, and that was sharing their story at luncheons. And we all know the story. The luncheon thing took off, and the small group and weekly meetings took off, traditional teams, committees. And it really was a successful model for a lot of years. I mean, CBMC has had a lot of different heydays, if you will. Some of those heydays back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s were quite amazing. I mean, masses of people that were being touched by Jesus. And thankfully, the what I call now the David's Mighty Men group that I meet with once a month, and they're some of the major donors for CBMC Northland. Many of those guys in that Mighty Men group were some of that early Caleb group guys. And these Mighty Men group guys now are, in their 70s and 80s, they're old dudes, but they're passionate, and they remember the heyday of CBMC. There came a point, my hunch is probably, let's just say it was around 2002, 2000, 2005, things shifted. With YouTube and social media and technology, really, anything you need to have, you can just access it by hitting a few buttons, right? You can just do it from your home and whatever. BSF is huge, CBS is huge, a lot of really good evangelical churches doing a lot of amazing Bible studies and men's groups and events, and there became so many opportunities for people to invest their finite number of hours and their money into something from a Christian perspective that I think what we did for a lot of years as CBMC, it just became more difficult to be unique. And I think what Don and I found, and the Northland area guys found and we're finding it now with YPs as well, and I can't wait for John. Am I going along here yet? Nope, we're good. The TAFs and the peer advisory group model are unique. There aren't any other organizations doing it quite for the same purposes as we are, and to the degree that we are, and with the history that we have. I mean, we've got this kind of perfect storm right now for the next phase of growth, for the next chapter of growth for CBMC nationally. And for whatever reason, God began to allow us to have growth in the Northland area in that specific arena of business leaders meeting once a month for half a day, taking a deep dive into their business. And slow but sure, we began to share the story with Gary and other guys around the country and, down in OKC and, wherever. And like I say, we now have a growing Trusted Advisor Forums focus in the country. For us in the Northland, we got to a certain point and we believed that there was something else. And it was probably 3 years ago that Don and I were praying about it. And we came up with this Vision 220. And Vision 220 is that we in the Northland area have about 220 cities with 5,000 people or more. 220 cities with 5,000 people or more. So a lot of smaller communities. In many ways, going into these smaller communities, it's a much easier conversation to get people excited about getting involved than it is in the bigger cities where there's a lot of attention from other ministries. And so what we really began to pray about and feel led to do was launch within a half an hour drive of all of these 5,000 person cities or more, and knowing that if we want to change the landscape of this country from a faith perspective, lost people don't walk into church. Okay, can we agree on that? If people don't, had a bad experience with God or Jesus or church or whatever in their younger days, they're typically not going to walk into church. Lost people don't walk in, but lost people do walk into work almost every day. So really the workplace is the greatest mission field that exists today. So for us to be focused on the workplace, and especially in the business leader that can have such a impact on the direction of a company and on the leadership, as Marty is, like I say, I don't have to be up here. Marty talked about everything. That's why the focus on TAFs is just so critical for us. And so we've taken this Vision 220 approach where we really are going after all of these medium-sized, smaller to medium-sized communities. We're not ignoring the big cities, but it has been amazing to see how God has really enabled this growth to take off and the lives have been changed. So there we go. We get together. What do? We let us consider how we may spur on one another toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging each other. And all the more as you see the day approaching, Hebrews 10:24 and 5. We are putting business leaders together to spur one another on toward love and good deeds. I mean, you listen to what Marty is doing financially and just loving on people and discipleship and being serious about that. This is what we do with our business leader groups, our Trusted Advisor Forums groups. So, John, could you go back to the top, please? And then could you pull up that video right there? This one? Yeah. Yes, sir. And we'll play that quick, and then we'll keep moving on. So there we go. We've got Cowboys of Minnesota too. Did you notice that? Yeah, that's Mark Hansen with the hat, the cowboy hat, right? He sticks out. It's what do we call it? It's a gag. What did you call it again? Costume. It's a costume. It's a prop. Well, I don't know if it's a prop. Mark is a bald guy, but he's got seafoam. So anybody that knows much about engines knows that seafoam is the additive that you put in your in your fuel system to dissipate water and whatever else that he does with Seafoam. And Mark is the owner of Seafoam, and he's a very passionate guy, you know, similar to Marty, about the impact that CBMC has had on his life, and he sees in others. We've got Chick-fil-A guys. We've got some really cool Nelson Wood Shims at the very top on the left. He's got 80% global market share in the wood shim industry. So this door right here has got wood shims in back of the sheetrock, and there are shims that keep it level. 80% market share for all wood shims globally. So we've got some big organizations. The majority of our guys, probably 80%, are small business owners. They're small to medium-sized guys. It's lonely at the top, especially when you're small. And by being together once a month for a half a day, lifting each other up, it's powerful for you. John, could you please go back to that slide? We'll go up, up, up. And so CBMC at a glance. I'm going to just really quick. I created this for myself as I share with people to give them kind of the what, why, how mission and the results from it. So what is CBMC? We develop businessmen to be ambassadors for Christ and spiritual producers. Why? The reality is that most people don't have a personal relationship with Jesus and will never set foot in a church. Many of those same people do go to work, the workplace and the marketplace where the greatest mission fields exist today. So how do we do it? We do it through men in small group and mentoring and discipling relationships, encouraging each other as we grow closer to Jesus each day through prayer and studying God's Word, the Bible. Small group, mentoring, discipleship, relationships, encouragement, studying God's Word. That's how we do this. That's it. That one line, you know, and the subset of the how would be TAFs and YPs and C3s and OT and all these little, you know, but that's it. And our mission is to present Christ as Savior and Lord, a business professional men to have developed business professional men to carry out the Great Commission. We know that. And what ends up happening after all this, the result is that active CBMC small group members, these guys that are coming into these small groups, they're equipped to recognize Jesus at work every hour of every day, regardless of the circumstances that they have in their lives. And I think that's been the biggest thing, is that even in the hardest times of people's lives, guys that are part of CBMC groups begin to recognize God's got a hand in this. For this I recall to mind, therefore I have hope. And we continue to help guys look back on how they got through, which gives them hope for the future. Their churches aren't doing it, their men's Bible studies aren't doing it, BSF isn't doing it, you know, YouTube isn't doing it, LinkedIn isn't doing it. Our guys together are doing it. John, please scroll up. We'll see what we have next here. Vision 220, I shared that. You know, so here's the deal. Guys are like, well, okay, how does this all fit into what we're called to do as a ministry? The ends of the ministry is what we call them. So it's ever increasing numbers. We need to see increasing numbers of men in discipling relationships, making decisions for Christ, increasing numbers of you know, amount of time that men are spending in the Bible and in prayer. Those are some of the ends of the ministries that we have as CBMC nationally, and what our board is calling us to. What we have found is that if we can reach the business leader first, all of these ends of the ministries will come. And in a lot of cases, reaching the business leader first is reaching them where they're struggling and where their pain point is in their life. So if we can come and address their pain point, and we can lift them up and carry them for a season, all of a sudden, all the other parts of CBMC that are really important to us as a ministry, they want to be involved with. Discipleship, planning targeted events on evangelism, becoming a volunteer in some way, shape, or form, supporting the ministry financially. By the way, a quick note on finances. In the Northland area, and it's, you know, John, myself, Tom, Don, Scott, on, and Seth, over 90% of the money that is coming into the Northland area to support our staff guys, over 90% of the money comes through guys that are Trusted Advisor Forums members. 90% of the money to support our ministry. Once guys get involved, business leaders like Marty, it's like, this is changing lives. I need to be part of this financially. God has given me stewardship. I've got the capacity to do this, and I can give generously. So on top of the $150 a month that we ask guys to consider to give to be dues for a member of the group, on top of that, guys are giving. I mean, we've got guys that are giving $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month, $5,000 a month. Yep. I mean, TAF guys that are giving at that level because they see what this is doing to change lives. And so, lastly, I'm just, Brainerd Lakes area, Brainerd, 30,000 person community north of Twin Cities, 2.5 hours, kind of out in the sticks. I mean, a lot of lakes and trees around and deer, and, it's whatever. There's not a lot going on. They don't get a lot of attention. I've been driving through there since I was 3 years old. 1967, I was driving through Brainerd, this little town back in the day. When I came on staff, I started to pray about it. I wonder if at some point a CBMC group in Brainerd would be the right thing to do. And as I prayed about that for a year or so, then I started to ask other people, would this maybe be an area that we should look at to starting? I asked Don about it, and Don said, yeah, So then I began to ask people, who do you know in the Brainerd Lakes area? And it was a guy in Mankato, south of the Twin Cities, that said, oh, I know a guy in Brainerd that I don't think he'd be part of a group up there, but he knows all the business people. He's on staff with Teen Challenge. He's the executive director for Teen Challenge up there, and he knows all the business guys. I'm like, John, could you make the intro between me and Sam? I talked to Sam. Sam's like, I know everyone up here. Well, we're going to do an informational luncheon and possibly have a CBMC group start up with business leaders. And Sam was like, great, we'll get them there. Well, we had all these people show up at the Prairie Bay restaurant. We had, 30 guys. From that, we launched 2 groups. Well, that was like 7 years ago. Well, now today, we have 5 Trusted Advisor Forums groups. We've got a Connect 3 group. We've got about a third of our guys that are in OT relationships. And right now, they've got a challenge on with each other where they want to have 100% of their guys in the Brainerd Lakes area be in an OT relationship by the end of the year. Guys are supporting financially. We're doing a Mayor's Prayer Breakfast up there. This will be our 6th annual Mayor's Prayer Breakfast that we're doing. We had Charlie Duke, an astronaut that walked on the moon. We had Mark Whitaker come up. We've had just amazing men come up and share their testimonies in events that have been sold out every year with 400 to 500 people, changing the whole community. The whole community is being changed as a result of these CBMC guys and this process that we had that's very unique. So that's one story about a small community. Let me look. All right, I'm going to go quick here. Let's look at just like individually. All right, this is all kind of big picture stuff that I've been talking about. Remember, when we talk about 700 guys, or we talk about, Vision 220 and 220 cities, and we can't forget with CBMC that we're talking one guy at a time. Michael didn't get too in depth last night because of the camera, and he's not here now, but I'll say it anyhow. I mean, he's had, Stan, it's been a rough go. It's been a rough go. I mean, he was telling me some things last night about like a year and a half ago, and it was really rough sledding. We've got guys that I know personally, including who I'm going to talk about right here, right now, with Ben Peterson. If it weren't for their CBMC group, they wouldn't be here anymore. They would have killed themselves. Our CBMC Trust Advisor Forums groups, our Connect 3 groups, our young professional groups are saving marriages. They're saving people from suicide. They're saving people from bankruptcy. They're helping people become better fathers and husbands and leaders and disciple makers. It's incredible. Well, in the case of Ben, Ben is a guy that I met, I don't know, it's probably been 8 years ago now, I would guess, is when he first got involved. And he was a young guy that had just come out of the Army, was in Iraq, in combat, and had just gotten out and was just really struggling. And I don't know the story exactly of who introduced Ben to CBMC originally. I don't recall how that went, but somebody did. Somebody introduced him to CBMC and said, you should check this out. Ben's this young guy. And when I first met him and he was just getting launched into a group, I mean, it was the drinking and it was the, PTSD, and it just was all the things that sucked. And he just didn't know how he was going to be able to move ahead. And so as he got into his Trusted Advisor Forums group, the guys just started to surround him and love on him and disciple him and lift him up and encourage him. And Ben's a go-getter, and when the times were coming that he wanted to go too fast, his guys in his TAF would slow him down. And slowly but surely, he began to come out of this fog that he had been involved with when he was over in Iraq. And then there came a point when, he really started to have a significant amount of success in business. But he began to see his business life as absolutely a mission field, and he was embracing that and getting after it. But he also felt like, you know what, I think I'm healthy now, and with the mentoring and the discipling and the accountability that I have in my TAF, God is calling me to something more. So he began to have this stirring about going to a different, chapter in his life. Well, his TAF guys kept saying, hey, that's all well and good, but you need to take it a little slower here. You need to just hold your horses a little bit. You're probably not quite ready for it. Well, eventually he was, his guys signed off and said, yeah, we can see now how you're ready. I remember having a conversation with Ben, and he was like, dude, I want to help young people. I just feel called to helping young people because I've been there. I'm like, yeah, Ben, that's cool, but let's think for a second about what is really unique about you. The same way that CBMC is unique in a lot of different ministry opportunities, and that's what's allowing us to have success these days and will propel us to success in the future. What about you, Ben, that makes you unique? Is it the fact that you like young people? Well, not really. That's, there's a lot of people that do missions and ministry work to young people. But the fact that he was a strong follower of Jesus and had all those experiences as an Army guy in combat, that was somewhat unique. So with that, if you can hit this video, and we'll check this out quick, and then a few more comments and we'll wrap this up. Ben wouldn't be who he is today without CBMC. He may be dead. If it wasn't for a CBMC guy saying, slow down, be patient, God has got something for you. And he's been doing this now for three and a half years. He's reached thousands of people for Christ. I think this year alone, there's, what did I read 800 or 900 people that have made a public confession of putting their life into Jesus' hands. I mean, it's unreal. So as you guys are thinking about young professionals, who's the next John Harrison? John and Ben were very instrumental in us launching our young professional ministry area focus. Tom and Paul Johnson got it going. I came in, staff guy, started to think and pray and do some things that were semi-effective. John and I and Ben worked together on some YP things that were semi-effective. And now John's going to share with you, after we take a break, a process that is very effective and scalable and powerful. So guys in your areas can be the next Ben Petersons and the next John Harrisons. There are many thousands of men that are the up-and-comers. And CBMC has an amazing, unique ability to reach those guys in a way in which no one else can do it. And as we have found, what we believe is that it starts with the business leaders. And so with that, guys, I apologize. I promised to be at 20, and it's about 26. Yeah, thoughts, ideas, questions, super quick. Otherwise, we're going to take a break. We're going to hear a song or two, and then John's going to be up, and we're going to have lunch at noon. So.
Is there any kind of trusted advisory forum for retired people? You spoke only of business leaders.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that we have got some members that are guys that have transitioned away from full-time Monday through Friday. You guys bailing?
We're getting ready to.
All right, safe travels, man. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You don't have to sneak out.
Great one.
Yeah, we love you guys.
Thank you, Michael.
Amazing experience.
Yeah,
An honor.
well, because of you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Safe travels to everyone.
till the next time.
Thank you so much.
We've got some guys that have transitioned out. What we have found is, in a lot of cases, they don't necessarily really want to be in a business leader group talking about business leader issues, but they want to be a resource. And that's where coming in and being a speaker at a YP acceleration team meetings, coming in and being a Paul and a Paul Timothy relationship, there are ways that we can get guys, but there are a few that are retired that are still in TAFs, but as far as like all retirees being in one group, no, not so much.
Some of them lead groups now, don't they?
Say that again?
Some retirees are facilitators now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That could very well be. There could be some guys that have transitioned away from full-time, Monday through Friday work at the office, but they have an amazing amount of business acumen and make a great facilitator, and we love to have those guys. So, yeah, good point. What else?
Question, can you roll that back to where the what, why, and how part? Yeah, there we go.
It's not on the website.
Is it?
No, it might be on, have you put it on the Northern one?
I don't think that's.
We can send this to Gary and make sure he gets it out.
Take your camera out and snap a picture if. So guys, as you're think through, in your area, what would be the next step that you could take to see one of these groups launched if you haven't launched one already? If you've got groups in your area, what would be the next step to take where you can maybe be the point guy to reaching out to others to say, who do you know in your network that could be part of one of these groups, and let's have an informational meeting and get this thing going. This is the way forward for us as a ministry to have the greatest amount of impact that we can possibly have. All the ends of the ministry come with it. The ministry is supported financially, and it's powerful, effective, and unique. So start to think about that and pray about it. And if God tells you don't have anything to do with it, then be obedient. If God is saying, you know what, I can be a part of the growth of this, then be obedient and figure out what that means. That's all I ask. What else, guys? Anything else? Otherwise, we're going to go.
I see in our market where we have both C3 and YP now, there's this funnel effect that's happening. And so we have the corporate that feeds into, the YP, the C3, and then that feeds into, actually the YP once a month. I try to get them to Connect 3, which is every week, and then we get them into one-on-one discipleship. So it's part of the chain.
Yeah.
And then without it, you kind of have this big gap that's almost too hard to get over.
Yes. Yep. Well stated. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for praying and thinking about what next. Thank you, Gary, for being my guy.
Hey, thank you, brother.